what we can continue to do to advance his efforts, and he has continued to provide leadership. And with that, I'd like to give him and yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Oregon, the sponsor of this bill, Mr. Blumenauer.
Thank you.
The gentleman is recognized.
I appreciate the gentleman's courtesy, and I appreciate his leadership and tenacity in terms of trying to help our beleaguered neighborhood restaurants. Our friends on the other side of the aisle, even if they got their dream piece of legislation, would not make any difference on the price of gasoline this year or next year. We're dealing with global supply. One of the things that will make a difference to break the grip that we have with the oligarchs and the sheiks is being able to deal with renewable energy that is not going to hold us hostage. We've seen remarkable progress that is made, and I'm sad that our friends on the other side of the aisle have been resistant to these innovations in terms of solar, wind, electrification, the things that will really make a difference today and tomorrow and help fight the crisis that we face with climate change and global warming. But this legislation will make a difference to 177,000 small neighborhood restaurants and other distressed businesses. From the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, these neighborhood facilities have been the hardest hit. You've heard already that they were subject to over 4 million jobs lost in the first few months of the pandemic. The unemployment in the restaurant industry remains stubbornly high, and approximately 90,000 restaurants have permanently closed since the start of the pandemic, and we've heard from countless others that are teetering on the edge. Restaurants are the cornerstone of a livable community. They have employed nearly 60% of Americans at some point in their career. I'd venture to say many of us on the floor of the House have had that experience. They are a major source of employment for people of color and women, and they support a $1 trillion supply chain from farm to table. The federal government has provided help for those institutions through the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, a program based on my Restaurants Act that I introduced in June of 2020. But the program was oversubscribed and underfunded. Only 1/3 of all applicants were funded, leaving 177,000 hanging in the balance. The relief for restaurants and other hard-hit small businesses will finish that job. More than 235 members of the House are co-sponsors of this legislation, the Restaurants Act, including 24 of my Republican colleagues. My legislation will provide $42 billion to help fund those restaurants that had not previously received awards, finishing everybody who's in line. $13 billion is a separate industry-neutral fund for small...
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield an additional minute to Mr. Blumenauer.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. Getting carried away. A separate industry-neutral fund for small businesses that have been disproportionately hit by the pandemic, like live events, travel, hospitality, and fitness. We've all heard from them in our district. And finally, the legislation extends the period of time that shuttered venue operators grants can be spent to harmonize it with the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. And best of all, this bill can be paid for with fraudulent pandemic relief funds that are recovered. Mr. Speaker, it's time for us to finish the job protecting our neighborhood restaurants and other distressed businesses. I'm proud to have been a sponsor of this. I deeply appreciate the broad bipartisan support in the House and the Senate, and I hope we will enact it today. I support the rule. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The gentleman from New York,